Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, one of the. Mhm.
Oh, all right.
Hey, you guys, I have to go. So thank you. Okay. Thanks. All right. Bye bye.
Oh, it's been 2 days ago.
I'm ready to say bad.
Sit bad.
Bad.
Actually, enjoy this one. Confirmation.
Oh, okay.
The small day.
Yeah, yeah. I actually laughed.
We
She
go
was
down
the
the
snow, and it's like, oh my god, am I gonna get brand milk? I joked with some friends. I was like, I lived in Michigan for the first 22 years of my life, and I don't ever recall having a bread meat. You know, what the heck is a bread meat? The weatherman or the news stations and supermarkets are in the food chain.
They're trying to get overstocked in this
Yeah.
pending storm. Take care of the overstock.
Then it's stupid to go to the grocery store because if the electricity goes out, you don't have any backup power.
Yeah, yeah.
Things are full.
But you put them outside, it's so nice.
Oh, yeah.
And even in Maryland too, like you say, get eggs, bread,
And milk.
milk, and toilet paper. Now, I'm trying to figure like what can you make with eggs, bread, milk? I mean, you make French toast, I guess. Maybe an egg sandwich.
I hear you. Drop out.
Yes, I did. Yeah, I suggested wheat. No. I said otherwise.
They have to have some type of movement.
I met up. The director is a lady. Earl Rundy? Yeah, assistant director. Yeah, he's a nice guy. He was the one who actually. You know, it was my wife. It was communication. The board members there. Saying, oh, we're looking. The board member can't. Somehow that came back to me. I met with Earl. And he seemed like a good, nice guy. In fact, the day we met, I was watching the homeless shelter church. That happened. Church. First United Methodist in Chesterfield. It rotates through a bunch of the churches during the winter. Yeah.
We're gonna start in 1 minute. What about one chair? Can I fill out a bullying report? I got a bullying report. Take my chair. What's that? No, he said I'm taking. He said I'm bullying you, and I'm taking. For the record, 12 grand to a kitchen. What I normally just give. Oh, my chair. Because I'm black.
I'll bring those back.
Okay, we're going to begin. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. Can we first start off by saying who we are and where we're from? Starting with you. What school? Oh, so you just say school.
Wayne Arnold, Queen Anne's County.
Nice to meet all of you. My name is Robert Murphy. I'm the Maryland State Department of Education, and my job is anything you can do. No, I'm kidding. My job is essentially school completion, alternative programs. School completion is a pretty name for dropouts. Student discipline. As some of you know, the discipline rate just passed on Monday. I was the recipient of 1,500 hate mail. Yeah, so student discipline and some other things that whatever. So I thank you for being here, and we are going to begin. First opening activity, brain teaser. What day of the year is the military? What day of the year is the military flag? Okay, so that's a great answer. That's the first time I've actually heard 10-4. So I'm going to give you guys partial credit, but the actual answer is March 4th. March 4th. Yes, yes. March 4th. Yes, March 4th. So you just had an influx of people. We actually kind of went over. Those of you who just came in, please say who you are, where you're from, starting right here. Thank you.
Hey, I'm Sandy Lucas. I'm from White Marsh Elementary.
Okay.
In County.
And the back row outside of the gentleman here.
I'm from Solitaire. I'm from Worcester County High School.
I got three chairs right here in the front. Oh, there's one right there back there. We'll have you guys announce yourself at the end when we move forward. So we're going to start with objectives. Define a common language to drop off participants will develop an understanding of chairs, a lot of drop off prevention. Participants will principles of developing concentration, and participants will learn about interventions and regulations. In Maryland, if you are a dropout, if you pass the GED, are you a graduate?
No.
Most of the time people say, oh no, GED is a approved program. In Maryland, we're actually one of the few states that actually does have a regulation that defines what a dropout is. And the dropout, if he has dropped out of an approved Maryland school program, the GED is not an approved Maryland school program, even though the state superintendent signs off on the Maryland high school diploma that it receives. And actually, we're the only state in the country that actually has our state board of education give out a high school diploma. So when a kid gets his high school diploma from the GED, after he passes the GED in Maryland, it says Maryland high school diploma. It does not have a school name on it. It just says Maryland high school diploma. It's signed by the superintendent, state superintendent, and the director of Department of Labor, Licensing, and Regulation. Colleges recognize it. Yes. It does not hold as much weight as a Maryland high school diploma, but it won't. If you have a GED, it doesn't prevent you from like going to college, whether it be in Maryland or. As a matter of fact, we've actually had several like high ups, like there's a couple of state's attorneys that have actually dropped out, gotten their GED, gone to community college, went to College Park, got their law degree, and then became state's attorneys in a particular area. Yes, ma'am, and then I'm going to you.
It doesn't have your ability to be accepted into certain military.
No, GED. The thing is, the thing is though, is that the military. So in yesteryear, because we didn't have that many soldiers and the military was large, they would accept folks with GEDs. Now, from what I've heard from recruiters, is they're a little bit hesitant to accept kids with GEDs because they want to see.
That's what I said.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
It does inhibit their ability.
Yes, it doesn't inhibit their ability, but because the military has shrunk, like I said, recruiters are now looking for more kids who actually have high school diploma versus GEDs. And you had a question, Mike?
But it still counts against our dropout rate as far as reporting to the state.
Yes. And that is something we've been trying to. I know I've been trying to push for the last 8 years. I've been in MSD, and it is falling on deaf ears. And the argument is that the GED, if we included it as a Maryland completion, the GED would cheapen the Maryland high school diploma. That's the argument. Whether you agree or that's the argument. Moving on. What is dropout prevention? So we use the term dropout prevention. We throw it around, and it's just this. It's every dropout prevention. so, I've looked through research. Again, this being my job, I've tried to find out what exactly drop-off prevention is, and I don't really have it. I've never seen a definition, so I've kind of crafted one. So what I call drop-off prevention is, and again, in the tiered logic framework, is a global approach to student engagement through relationships, academic rigor, related enrichment activities such as sports clubs, student government, and action programs. Drop-off prevention essentially is how many people are practicing PBIS or know about PBIS? Okay. Drop-off prevention is essentially the universal aspect if we're putting it in a tiered logic system. Drop-off prevention is really about all of the services and all of the things that kids have access to keep them engaged and connected to school. That's what drop-off prevention is. So that's the definition that I have. Drop-off intervention is students receive targeted interventions designed to help them reach the end goal of graduation. Drop-off intervention support can include but not be limited to academic, behavioral, familial, and personal. And again, there's a difference between dropout prevention and dropout intervention. Dropout intervention is specifically identifying kids who are at risk for dropping out. So, as I mentioned to somebody earlier, I almost was a dropout. I got involved in football, and that stopped me from dropping out. So, my intervention would have been football and getting involved in sports that allowed me to play, that got me more engaged in school. It could be in your local school system. It could be something like check in, check out. It could be check and connect. It could be some type of mentoring program. The intervention doesn't matter. It's just you're targeting an intervention to a student or to a group of students who are at risk of dropping out. And then the last piece, which is dropout recovery. Essentially, this allows kids to actually make up credits or gain credits if they don't have them or they've lost them. Later on, there's a slide that we'll talk about briefly. You guys have been this over a little while, but that we'll talk about that kind of aligns with this. So we're going to look at the reason why kids drop out in Maryland. Essentially, in Maryland, there are 3 reasons why. Lack of interest, whereabouts unknown, and academic. And these are taken from the code. These are taken from the when students withdraw, the student withdrawal form. So if you look here, this was hugely lack of interest. But lack of interest continues across to remain pretty high. This is concerning to me because we don't know where 50% or over 50% of our dropouts actually are. What I've also seen, particularly since this economic downturn, is a lot of kids leaving school now because they have to help support families. And so that might also contribute to this whereabout unknowns. There's also a code, I believe it's code 44 or 46 when students drop out, or withdrawal code, but it actually identifies whether a kid is dropping out for employment purposes. That has gone up since 2007, almost 20% like block. And so we see, I think a few years ago it was 2007, it was 6, it was like 200 kids per year. Now it's up to about 1,000 kids per year drop out because of economics. So a lot of families are feeling stressed by the economy, and a lot of kids are going out to help their families. Let's talk about that. So we're gonna move on to bridge excellence, attendance discipline, and systemic model of dropout. This comes from Chicago, and it talks about kids missing, how many days of school kids miss, and their probability of actually graduating on time. If you notice, 0 to 4, 87%. As you keep going down, it just keeps getting lower and lower. And I know on the shore, it's a little bit different. So transportation isn't always at the liberty that it is in, let's say, Baltimore City or some other places, or even Montgomery County for that matter. So if a kid misses the bus here and there's no transportation, or there's a bad storm, in the case of Somerset County, where you're bringing people over on the boats, the kids are missing school. But we'll talk a little bit more about absence because I think that the attendance piece it's to me almost an output or an indicator, but I don't know that it's a root cause as to why kids are not graduating. That's just my personal observation. And please understand, this is a back and forth. This isn't just me talking. So if you have questions or comments, please just raise them.
So let me ask you a question of these these days that are, for instance, because of sick or because of illness
Indiana. That was what that indication what that was. We're going to talk a bit because we're going to talk a little bit, about discipline, which I think is a huge contributor to some of our challenges I'm sorry, absences. So I got a real quick activity for you. Hopefully everybody has a pen or a pencil. I'm going to pass these cards up to you, and I want you to answer those 4 questions. Give you about another minute. Okay, we're gonna. Why do you think I asked these questions? In your opinion, how it seems disrespectful that will result in a recommendation of suspension. Exactly. The challenge, and I'll speak to this now. The challenge with disrespect, and disrespect is the number one reason why kids disrespect in the state of Maryland. Overwhelmingly, it affects African American students more so than it affects other groups of students. But this is in our state, 53%, 54% of suspension in our state is disrespect. And what I'm trying to get at is that it's so nebulous and so subjective. I've done this thing all over the state when I ask this question, and I've gotten so many different answers. Some are as funny to me as a kid is whining, and thus they're disrespectful, and thus they are going to the office because they're whining to a kid throwing a chair across the room. Now, I don't consider that disrespectful. I consider that dangerous and a threat. You need to go to the office because of that, but not necessarily for disrespect. I think in our state, some of our challenge with the concept of disrespect really is around people now. One, we don't have a common definition as to what it is. And then second, in my opinion, teachers and some administrators may be miscoding what disrespect is. Like I said, throwing a chair across the room is not disrespectful. A chair is dangerous. And so it needs to be categorized as such. The second question is, how these things make you feel. As I said, I was actually the primary person responsible for the discipline regs. I got 3,000, actually over the course of two comment periods, I got something like 6,000 comments from Marylanders on, you're laughing at it. It wasn't too funny for me. But I had to read every one of those things and see what people's responses were. And one of the things that I wanted to hear was from educators. And not in the fear-based, oh my God, like some of the different entities that we had talking about this work, but from real educators, people who are in the business, who are trying to help kids as best they can. What were your feelings when you felt like you were disrespected? So that's the reason for the second question. And then the third question, please rank the following from least to worst: disrespect, insubordination, disruption. I'd really like to know what's the worst behavior, because the funny thing for me, when I ask teachers across the state, what is the worst of these behaviors? This is the one, insubordination is the one that comes up as being the worst. And the data actually show that insubordination is actually the worst. I'm not going to get into what all I know is when you look at the data is from suspensions in the state. If you look at 6th grade to 9th grade, insubordination goes from, let's say last year, I think the number was 167 in 6th grade. 9th grade, it was 1,700. And you see, and so again, I'm the person that looks at the data as it relates to suspension across the state. What's moving the numbers? There is a huge jump in everything from 5th to 6th. So apparently our students go to summer camp to Satan, and they're like, hell yeah, we're gonna tear this children up in 6th grade. I don't know, but there is typically a doubling, tripling, or even some cases quadrupling suspension from 5th to 6th. We go from roughly maybe 500, 400 to 2,800 or 3,000 statewide. Yes,
the elementary level. I'm wondering, let me just tell you, I think this is, I'm thinking, I'm a thought all about this, but I'm thinking that customer teacher, physical attack, those kind of things. I don't think this tripping their eyes or something, because sometimes kids usually understand all that. But I'm wondering, when you're talking about those numbers jumping from 5th grade to 6th grade, I'm thinking too that most of the 5th grade, well, most of those kids are 6th and 8th grade. And I'm wondering if some of the behaviors that maybe at an elementary level would have been tolerated because it's still more of a nurturing level, that the transitioning, that when you get to middle school, it's kind of like things are more cut and dry. It's usually, a lot of times the boys are big school still. And we do the things and we're not dealing with that. So I'm wondering if some of it, I think it's just the fact that they're starting, the hormones are starting to kick in, and starting to get pre-adolescent. But I'm wondering too if some of the behaviors would have been tolerated as a teacher, or even as an administrator, middle school, elementary, because we feel like we're still teaching kids how to learn how to behave. Whereas, and I understand, when you get to middle school, you feel like this kid should know how to behave like that. So I'm wondering if maybe
feedback that I've received from middle school, and I'm not gonna ask anybody in here if they're middle school folks.
I've done all
the middle school people that I've talked to have always said that the elementary teachers are soft. They're too nurturing. And that's the expectation when kids transition from 5th to 6th, is that they expect them to behave and expect them to have certain norms down. The only thing I say about expectations is expectations without articulation is a wish. And I know, in my opinion, I don't know that we're very clear as to what our expectations are. We have these unspoken expectations that we operate from, but we don't necessarily articulate them to our young people. And then when they come in and they do whatever, then it means all hell is broken loose because I have my personal pet peeves, and so I'm going to jump on those pet peeves. You had a question?
Not one question, I was going to say, like, that question is where a lot of, like, feedback comes in,
Mm-hmm.
because everything's demonstrated, yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, certainly. So getting back to this, so real quickly again, talking about the discipline stuff. The numbers, like I say, jump. Does anybody know what year fighting spikes in middle school? I'll tell you. Seventh grade. Yeah. The two big years for fighting is seventh and ninth. And so, even with the conversation, the state board passed the regulations, and I received a lot of comments that people were saying, "Oh my God, these are dangerous kids." The reality is, no, these are smart alecky kids. They're smart mouth kids. They're attitude kids, but they're not necessarily dangerous. Our numbers in fighting again, they spike, or not spike, but they in some cases double, triple, quadruple from fifth to sixth. But fighting as you watch the number, the needle go up, it actually only increases about maybe 5 or 10% from sixth grade to ninth grade. So we have roughly about 15 or 1600 statewide in sixth grade, and by ninth grade it goes up to maybe 17 or 18. So the numbers are not necessarily, they're high, but they don't increase like these numbers. The other challenge, and I put that on here, is refusal to obey school rules, and that's another one of those nebulous kind of disrespect things where you ask, what is refusal to obey school rules? And it can range from you telling the kid because of the fire drill go sit on the bleacher and they say no, to some kid wearing his hat in the school. And so part of the challenge is a lot of our suspension is really related to a lot of the nebulous stuff that really is undefined or hasn't been defined, and kids are being sanctioned for that. Yes.
And a lot of times the teachers are very inconsistent. You tell them to be like the high office or
Yeah. And that's the other part of this conversation that's concerning to me, particularly as it relates to number 3 and number 1, which is suspension. Oftentimes, or in some cases, is really related to our tolerance level, and I don't necessarily know that that's a fair experience for young people. Let's be very real. I mean, I drove over here from the other side of the shore, and some people go 5 to 7 over, some people go 10 to 12. I tend to go 15 to 20. When I get a speeding ticket, it's pretty clear why I got a speeding ticket. I know that I was speeding. What isn't clear for young people is what's disrespect, what's refusal to obey school rules, and all of those things. And part of the reason that I have this fourth question on here is because this is the primary reason when you look at African American suspension in the state, and they're the number one group being suspended, and being suspended out of school, that it is for these reasons. There are fights. I'm not denying that there are fights, but this is the primary reason. This is roughly African American students in our state represent about 60% of disrespect suspension. 60%. And those are things that are interpersonal things, not necessarily, again, violence or things like that. Those are interpersonal issues that we may have with each other. And I don't necessarily know that all disrespect means that you need to leave the building. And I'm certainly not suggesting that kids should be able to come to the room, tell you fuck off, excuse my language, and they should be able to sit there in the class with me. But I think we've got to find some kind of middle ground. State-wise, there's also a regulation in Comar that allows you to remove a kid from class, and it doesn't count as a suspension or an in-school suspension, as long as that kid is still receiving the same service. So you could, let's say, take them from your class, which might be a third grade class, and put them in a fourth grade class. They're still receiving instruction. They still have access to their work. Thus, it's not a suspension. I'm sure some of you are already using that or know about that.
Also, counselor intervention.
Yeah, no.
Counselor, 2 things. The PBIS does direct. It's supposed to be good so that there's no expectation. And I've lost my train of thought. It's all me. Counselor intervention in Kent County, if the student is removed from the class for 30 minutes or less, it's a suspension, unless they go to the counselor, as you said. The one question I'm going to ask, because I don't think the races will never understand each other. It doesn't seem like there are just different things that go on, which means that communication must increase to we gain more understanding. When you say more African Americans are suspended, true. Are the administrators and the people handing down these things, are they also, is it racial equality or is it African Americans?
I'm glad you asked that question because depending on where you are in the state, it looks different. So there's a county on the shore that there are. So let me back up. I've identified 75 schools in the state that have 200 or more suspensions. In most of the cases of these schools, they actually have roughly, if you take the number of suspension events, like I'm gonna give you one example. One school has an enrollment of 917, and they have 650 suspension events.
And then how many originally?
There are repeaters, don't get me wrong. But here's the other side, and to your point. So when I look at who's being suspended and why they're being suspended, I see 545 African American students suspended, 43 whites. So for me, we might need to have a little conversation about what's happening in the school. Yes, but here's the other thing. So in another system where the administrators, all the administrators are black in this case, some of their suspension numbers are not as bad, but are in the ballpark of the school that I mentioned on the shore. So I think there is a racial component to this issue, but there's also an intra-racial component or intra-cultural component that's happening that I don't necessarily know that we've really taken the time to really kind of invest in. Because the same thing when you look at a place that's, let's say, the Upper Shore, predominantly white, and you see like white kids being suspended like 2 or 3 and 4 times that of black kids. And so for me, and I know the numbers are different as far as enrollment, for me, the whole notion of disproportionality and disparate impact, I'm more inclined to listen to disparate impact and disproportionality because I personally believe we need to set a standard on suspension. Because I think what we do now with disproportionality, we measure the number of how many times black kids are suspended by white kids. I think that's unfair to white kids in my opinion. I think what you need to do is set a standard, and the standard is 5%. If 12% of white kids have been suspended, then we have a problem. If 30% of black kids have been suspended, we have a problem. I think the issue is that we haven't set a standard. Even though we have standards for attendance, dropout rate, and all these other things, we've not set a standard for suspension or an acceptable standard. And thus, we have these issues where we have race and all those things. You want to say something else?
How much does that number?
I mean, you could argue in some cases it does, but the research says very clearly that when you remove socioeconomic status, you remove special needs, what it comes down to is the kid is still black.
No, I mean across the state.
Across the state, yeah.
Economics. I mean, kid coming from a poor economy, we have in Kent County we have the rednecks, not all of it, and the African Americans from Garnett and Chesterton. So, but the difference is, I'm in elementary now. We're all elementary now, but we see it. And hopefully, we can stop the dropout rates for these kids. And like you said, the disparity of how the suspensions are going.
Can I offer this up? So I hear you, and I hear you because I believe that we oftentimes talk about white privilege, and I think that we need to have another conversation about what white privilege is because I don't necessarily know that white privilege applies to all white people, but that's a whole other subject and a whole other presentation. But I would suggest this, that they are having, when you look at poor whites, they are having the same, not the numbers aren't as high, but they're having the same rough experience as poor blacks, poor Latinos. They're having very similar experiences. And I would also suggest too that when we talk about equity, and we talk about equitable treatment and all those things, I think we also need the equitable resources because the reality is those kids that are in poor schools, whether it be black schools, poor white schools, or poor Latino schools, tend to get teachers that nobody wants. They're reassigned teachers, or they get the newbies, they get the TFAs, they get all of those folks who aren't necessarily even skilled in instruction, let alone in managing, 35 kids in a classroom. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful to anybody from the TFA, Teach for America teacher, or any of that stuff. I'm just saying I think that they're integrated into the wrong environments. To integrate them in a needy situation, to give the least skilled people to the most needy people. Just to me, it's like you wouldn't send me in to be a lawyer for somebody. I don't know what I'm doing. I mean, I might have a degree, but I don't know what I'm doing. So, yes.
Talking about inequity, do you think also too? I mean, I'm thinking that depending upon what school you're in, what school system, there may be more resources to, like for instance, you may have more like in-school suspension. You may have an alternative school for kids that continue to have problems. So when you look at your data, do you also take all of that into account? Yes.
I mean, certain places do, certain places have resources. Montgomery County's resources are going to dwarf Kent County's. And Montgomery County as a
So does the data look better then? If you really put everything, just away all that kind of stuff?
It looks better. It looks better, and their use of out-of-school suspension is not as high as some others. I'm not picking on Kent, but
No, my daughter teaches at Decatur. And they don't have computers and technology that we have because we're talking, we definitely have computers and iPads and iPods. So we are chock a block full of all the technology. Whereas she's got a lot of kids down there, and they don't get it because of the internet. And I'm not throwing that wild.
it depends on the jurisdiction. Like I said, I was using Montgomery County as an example. Is that their community also they got all these different community entities that feed into schools and give money to schools.
But I guess what I'm saying is if you're going to compare data, let's say data can say what you want to say, but if you're going to be really fair to everybody, it needs to be compared apples to apples. That everybody is on the same level.
I would agree. And I'm going to move forward because we spent a decent amount of time on suspension. So these three numbers. This is the amount of instructional time students have missed who were suspended one day. This is statewide now. This isn't related to one particular local school system. So the 51,465 kids were suspended last year. This is 1 day of instructional time missed. This is 2 days. This is 3 days. And we all know, obviously, that we got a number of kids who suspended more than 3 days. So when we start talking about long term, as we listen, and this is tying it back to dropout, we start talking long term projections and performance and all of those things. We've got 52,000 kids who missed this many instructional minutes, and obviously, we broke it down to be, whatever 1,800 minutes per day or whatever it is. We have to begin to understand that we got to get a little bit wiser in how we manage the issue. I'm certainly not suggesting that schools should ever be unsafe, but some of the things that we can manage in-house, we probably need to manage in-house, particularly as the Maryland standards for college and career readiness as they come down. It's not Common Core anymore. We renamed it. That's it.
Well, that brand is toxic already, so it's renamed.
Yes. So we're gonna move ahead, keep moving ahead. So anyway, real quickly, everybody knows that suspension in the state of Maryland is a legal absence, thus kids are entitled to their classwork. Everybody knows that. Because there were some people that didn't know that at the NEA, and I was kind of concerned, or MSA. So real quick, we want to talk about semi-dropout model. Data should drive your decision making, find out root cause, intervention development, intervention goal, and assignment, and intervention assessment, and that will help you with dropout prevention. So when it comes to data, I mean, certainly these aren't necessarily all the questions. You can add more questions to this, but data, does your increase or is there an increase or decline in dropouts? What is the school system expectation of dropouts? Again, state standard is 3%. You may have your school or your system may have a standard of 2%. Your superintendent may not want to see 1% dropout. Is there an increase or decline? Numbers kind of shift depending on where you are. I know I looked at a systems dropout numbers a few days ago, and they were really low. And depending on what system you're in, your numbers can jump. I was looking at a system, a very small system. They had 11 dropouts in their system. They only had a 1.6 dropout rate. They got 24 dropouts and went up 3.12. So, there's only 13 more kids, but depending on your size, it impacts your numbers. Yeah,
Someone takes 5 years to graduate. They had to drop out for
no.
They get like a 20. It takes them 5 years, and then they look at the cohort.
the older, like, so now we have a 3-year cohort, 4-year cohort, and 5-year cohort. To my knowledge, there is no penalty for a kid graduating in 5 years. To my knowledge.
I think the way our system understands it is they have a 20% budget. Oh, 20%. That's what we've been told is we've been calculating.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you just kind of right here and just.
And that's coming from our board, but that's.
Is it accurate that a student who drops out, comes back, drops out 3 times in a year? That's just one dropout in that year? No,
If you have filled out the paperwork, it's 3 different dropouts.
We're told that.
Cohort wise, it's only 1, but in the annual counting, it is 3 separate dropouts.
And if they do that over 3 different years, then you've been hit.
But then I would think if you still got them to graduate on time with their cohort, amazingly enough, they come back and they graduate with their cohort, and they don't kind of drop out at all. So we all have totally
In your cohort numbers, they would not, but if you're doing an annual reporting, which is what happens annually with the state, they do a cohort and they do the annual model, then in your case, if you dropped out 3 times during the year, then those 3 separate dropouts would be 3 separate dropouts. So you could have, just like suspension, you could have a kid count for more actually than they really are. They're only 1 kid, but they could be 5 dropouts or even 5 suspensions for that matter.
In order to come back, if someone drops out, then you have principals who are afraid to take them back because you don't drop them out again and again. Do we just bring them back and hope that they don't make the same mistake again, or they're like
State law says you got to bring them back.
Okay, so can you do is there steps like you can do X, Y, and Z in this evening school program before you bring it back?
You can certainly assign them to an evening high school. I don't think there's not any state regulation that says you can't. You're still providing with the education, and you can set up those things. I know in some cases, I mean, again, use suspension as an example. Some kids are expelled from the system, and the system will say to them that they need to get, let's say, drug counseling, or they might get tested, some anger management counseling, something like that, before they can actually return to the school system whenever they return. And if they fulfill their requirements, then they can actually come back. So it's not, to answer your question, yes, you can actually do that. You can put it all in. Again, it's up to the local school system. So real quickly, why are students dropping out? You guys as counselors and as people who work in the schools, are not necessarily yet elementary or middle school people, but the high school people, you have access to this data on a daily basis. So you can find out why your kids are leaving, and you can actually begin to plot and plan to address whatever reason they're dropping out. If it's a specific reason or several specific reasons. Develop a profile. One of the things that we need to understand is that kids who drop out oftentimes hang around similar kids. So, you can develop a profile of what a dropout looks like in your particular school. On the shore, it might look different than it looks in Baltimore City or in Prince George's County, but ultimately, you can begin to identify those kids, or identify a profile. And then lastly, identify your kids who are the most at risk. Those kids that are struggling with attendance, those kids who have behavioral issues, those kids who have poor classwork. And there's another tool I'll show you at the end of the presentation that's actually free, that actually will help you in getting that information together. We already talked about root cause. Is it motivation, social, personal, transportation, academic needs, mobility, discipline? Intervention should be related to the student and or family problem motivation, determine best practices, adapt to the context, and then goal or intervention assignment. This is where I think, and quite frankly, what the state board did with the discipline regulations, we're moving towards more of a model of kind of, I don't want to say behavioral health, but we are moving away from a model where teachers just all they do is teach. I would actually suggest that teachers, that's the old model, the old way of thinking. Teachers now are much more case managers, with teachers being a part of what they do. And you guys as counselors, I think, are gonna have a lot of issue with that too, because I think your roles will be changing in the near future as well. So those of you who are close to retirement, get out what you can. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry. I'm just looking at the slide right here, and I think one of the biggest difficulties for us in my high school, when we do check in, check out, and try to do our intervention strategies, is honestly an incentive for students actually really look like what they actually really want. I mean, and that's outside of food. Food always seems to be the only
Yes.
thing that we really can use, like that's the go-to.
Mhm.
So any ideas?
I mean, so there are
other
some.
than them not having to go to school, that's the other thing that they always ask for.
You can let them out for class 5 minutes early, 10 minutes early. You could give them extra credit points or something like that if they could use to supplement a grade. Or, yeah, I mean people will talk about fidelity of instruction and all that jazz, but for high school students, I would agree it's a different animal, or it's a totally different animal than it is in elementary and in some cases middle. So yeah, I have a list. Those are the things that are coming off the top of my head. My contact information is at the end, so email me and I'll shoot you that list. You guys can have hopefully read that or will read that. Real quick, that's on this particular side. Goals have to be measurable, specific, and collaborative. And this is where the buy-in comes in. You can't do things to people. You've got to work with them to get whatever it is they want done. And when I talk to students across the state, and you talk to, one of the challenges is we don't include them in actually solving their own problems. So part of what I would suggest to you, when I was a former administrator, I surveyed my kids and asked them, okay, what would be a good incentive for you guys? And some of it was food. A lot of it was, just social time. Can we have a party or, whatever, a dance after school or whatever? So those are ways that we were able to help, or I was able to kind of meet their needs. Something we found out too, and I don't say that it happens, I'm sure, but kids riding the bus. We used to always have issue with kids around 10:30, 10 o'clock in the morning. Kids would be angry, they'd be ready to fight. A lot of things happen at 10, 10:30. Finally, I asked the kids, okay, what's happening? And a lot of the kids said, we get on the bus at 6 a.m., 6:30. One, I'm cranky. Some are even taking medication, so the metabolism speeds. So they're hungry on the what at 10 o'clock, grumpy. And so what we did was we opened up school store at 10 o'clock, 10:30, 10:15 to kind of mitigate some of the challenges. And once we did that, we stopped having all the people at 10 o'clock. Real quickly, and I know we don't have a whole lot, we have about maybe 15 minutes left, so I'm going to kind of move like at warp speed. The theory of student relativity, E equals AC squared equals C. Conduct, attendance, and coursework equal engagement and completion. So this E is engagement. This A is attendance, coursework, conduct equals completion. And I know with the push of the Maryland standards of college and career readiness, we can't necessarily focus on the relationships piece, but I think that is the biggest piece. When I talk to kids all over the state, I consistently hear relationships. I've never had one kid come to me and say, I really enjoyed your pedagogical influence and your pedagogical strategy today. What I heard was, you care about me, you make me feel like I'm a part of something, I want to be here. And that's what we're seeing, that our standards seem to be forgetting that that's a very important part, and probably the linchpin that can get kids to this. Yes, and this comes from kids in Philly who dropped out. I would have stayed in school longer if we had better relationships between students and teachers, better relationships between students, classes that focus on challenges academic, adolescent space, weekly meetings to discuss problems, counseling programs, and child care. So they even say it too. We'll move to cycle of engagement. This is I'm going to get you guys some tools. Emotional engagement. And let me be very clear. The emotional engagement piece is huge for kids who are vulnerable. Those kids that we've talked about, kids who are in a lot of cases living in poverty, those kids who are some of our disaffected populations, they are the ones who need the emotional engagement. Some of the other kids who come from stable environments, they might need it too, but the numbers for them are going to be less. They're going to need more of the cognitive and the behavioral engagement. And they actually will have the actual behavioral engagement, so they're really need the cognitive engagement. Those kids who come from stable households and all those things, not all of them want to learn, but many of them want to learn. But the other kids who are the more vulnerable need the emotional engagement, and they need you to make them feel connected. So as it relates to adults, we the adults provide safety, we're consistent, we communicate, we're honest, we care, we demonstrate expectations. It allows the student then to trust, give us emotional engagement, allows them to invest, allows them to have confidence, and then then allows them to have performance. One of the key things about performance, though, is sometimes performance doesn't look like you jump from a 50 on your last paper to a 90. Sometimes performance means you jump from a 50 to a 53 or 57. Or I'm not getting suspended 4 times a year, I'm getting suspended 1 time. That's what performance looks like. And unfortunately, what we're struggling with is providing, at least in my eyes, providing these things to all of our students. So we have a student population that is not getting these things and not getting these things met, in some cases at home, but then also not getting them met at the school. Thus, they don't trust the adults and they don't trust the adult environment. They don't invest in the adult environment, and then also they have no confidence in the adults of the adult environment. And so you suspend me. So what? I'm not invested in this environment. Who cares? I mean, how many of you have been a part of conversations with students when you suspend them or you go to discipline them or consequence, and they're like, sorry, what? Okay, man. This happened last week. And that's because we have not provided these things. And again, let's be very clear, those kids who are vulnerable will test those things. So even when you show them and demonstrate them, they're going to test to see if you're really real because they've been hurt enough times, they're not going to put themselves out there. So it's imperative that you are consistent with these things and you maintain them. The other piece, particularly as it relates to performance and going kind of tying it back to suspension, is the fact that suspension is an event. And what I've heard from so many different kids all over the state is that it becomes a definition. I had a young girl I worked with. She actually was from the shore. I believe she might have been from Queen Anne's County. She was president of the Maryland Association of Student Council. She was walking down the hallway one day. 2 girls jumped her. Now she was a big girl, and so she was able to fight them off, and she actually ended up beating the 2 girls up versus them beating her up. But one of the things she said to me, she said, Mr. Mr. I had no idea how people would look at me so differently when I was young. And they said to her, you shouldn't have fought back. You shouldn't have fought. And she's like, well, I got killed by 2 girls. Like, what am I supposed to do? Pretty much, yeah. That was, she said that was the overall philosophy. But here's the deal, and I'm going to tie it back to the kids who are the most vulnerable. That young lady, 3.5, 3.8 GPA, was on teams, was the president of the Maryland Association of Student Councils. She had already been president of her local jurisdiction student councils. She had a lot of things that buttressed her or that reinforced her. So when teachers came to her and said, that was wrong, she had all this reservoir to draw from as far as positive experiences. The challenge for our most vulnerable population is they don't have that reservoir to draw from. And so when we say things to them, it becomes internalized and it goes into the other reservoir, and they got a whole bunch of negative things in their reservoir. They don't have a whole lot of positive. And so that's why it's important, again, to provide those things for all students, but particularly our most vulnerable students because they need those things. And then, going back to this real quickly, when you provide those things, you get the emotional engagement from the vulnerable students, and then you get the behavioral alignment, which is behavioral engagement, and you also get the cognitive engagement. That's the performance. And again, that performance may not look from 50 to 90, it may look from 50 to 53. And so we got to celebrate those 50 to 53 and reinforce. We're going to move forward. Strategies to reduce dropout, parent-school partnerships, credit recovery options. I'm going to show you that in a little bit. Graduation coaches, mentors, and case management. Quite frankly, most programs as it relates to dropout prevention, the things that we purchase, the programs we bring into our schools, are relatively the same thing. There is a mentor or a case manager or whatever it is who checks in with a certain group of young people, either 1, 2, 5, 10, whatever it is, or a certain group, to make sure that they're connected to the school building and all those things. So just common themes. Alternative options. Some people have alternative programs and character development, which is resiliency. This is again the kind of things that dropout programs offer kind of support, credit, acceleration, recovery, things to make decisions. This is what we provided. If you go to MSD's website and type in Dropout Resource Guide, there is a new Dropout Resource Guide for 2012. It highlights the programs that all local jurisdictions are doing in the state of Maryland around dropout prevention. It also highlights what the target populations are of those particular programs or interventions. There's also some research on what works and what works clearinghouse. And there's also a few tools that you can use. There's also soon to be an alternative programs resource guide that will be developed. Also, I'm starting to drop a resource guide. There's also standards for alternative programs. An alternative programs resource guide will have it. Senate Bill 362, which is happening as of 2015, 16, 14. I believe 15, 16 actually has schools hanging on to students until they're 17. So the dropout age will raise from 16 to 17 and then go to 18. Now, quite frankly, there isn't a whole lot of research that supports this move. I know because I actually had to do the research to report to the General Assembly on this, and I just actually received a report from the Regional Educational Lab, who also said exactly the same thing. There is not any real data that points to raising the age of completion or raising the age of compulsory attendance that equates to high school graduation. Because for years they have been pressing to raise the age of graduation, and I think because President Obama said it, what was that, State of the Union 2014, I'm sorry, 2012, he said we should raise the age of compulsory attendance. Everybody should raise their age of compulsory attendance, so everybody did. Reality is about 10 states did it before Maryland, and there really isn't any difference in their graduation rates. There isn't any difference. Their truancy rates have kind of jumped up a little bit. But
when this goes into that, when the kid drops out at 16, and then if the age raises to 17, and all of a sudden this kid between 16 and 17, you're going to have to pick it up in the class.
It depends. If they are 16 or 17 before, I think it's July 1st, then they don't have to come back. I believe that's the number. If they're 17 before July 1st, if they're after July 1st, you gotta take them back. I believe it's either 2000. I think it's 2014, 15, or no, I'm sorry, it's 2015 and 16. I believe the first, and then it's 2016, 17 on the other. So you go from 16 and 17, 2015 to 16, and then 2017. It's you go all the way up to 18.
Is there a time for that? So I mean, like, there is no exception.
There are some exceptions.
But for the most part, they'll stay on the books until they're 18.
Probably so. Probably so. There are certain exceptions that they provide, like so in the regulation or in the law, there are if they're enrolled in an alternative program and they drop out, they can. If they are become a parent, there's a few caveats that allow them still to drop out, but essentially that's the law. Actually, wish I brought this. I can give it to you guys. Yes, ma'am.
Will they ever look at community as an alternative program?
No. I mean,
because I know we used to decode them to GED transfer. If they enroll. And so you can do that.
And that's to me is the general problem with education. We refuse to be flexible. And for me the goal is all kids complete. Whether they complete in the GED, they complete in a alternative program, whether they complete in high school, whether they complete in a vocational program. No, they still will be able to take it. Because you can actually, based on the legislation, you can drop out to the GED.
Okay. Because I know we have to tell them to drop out before the GED starts to enroll, but they have to drop it and they're about to 18. So that is a
That's one of the things. So, real quickly, these are drop-out prevention programs that ideas that work, and it's what works clearinghouse achievement. Darlene, we put these on. Are we gonna put the posting presentations online, or?
We can.
Okay. I'll make sure I get this to Darlene. That's a lot of stuff. And so I'm gonna move real quickly because I think one of the things I really want to get into. We only got maybe 2 and 5 minutes left. Real quickly, is this drop-out early warning system. Okay. How many people have heard of the early warning system offered by Better High Schools? Okay. Excuse me. Why are you bullying me? I'm in the middle of a presentation. I ask somebody to hang on. No. Okay, so real quickly, there's an early warning tool that is absolutely free for you to download. It comes from betterhighschools.org. And what it does is it will actually produce reports for you. You'll have to plug in the data, but ultimately the tool is designed to help you. You said it's free. It helps you identify students at risk and monitor student progress, and then also you can customize the tools for your particular environment. It gives you school level reports. It can give you student level reports, detailed student reports, and then student level interventions reports. I wish I actually had the time to demonstrate what it is. This is just what it looks like online. So you can see, it can give you a time frame. If you want to create a cohort group of kids, you can do that. You can talk about, student and dropouts, transfers, all those things. You can do attendance. And I'm sorry we're rushing through this, but again, I'm going to make sure this is a presentation. And again, the key is that it's free. I know as a state, some of us have a lot of money, some of us have no money. And so what I know I try to do is provide people as much as I possibly can in free. And I know it's funny because I actually proposed this or gave this to a school system that had money, and they would rather spend $200,000 on a system when they got exactly the same thing. But lead a horse in water. And that's the website to actually get it and download it. Again, it's a totally free product. They've also got a middle school tool as well that you can download. That's a very similar tool. And then they provide trainings on their particular tool once you sign up for it. And real quickly, this is what I was talking about, credit earning opportunities. State of Maryland, Comar is so wide on credit earning that you could actually probably slide an 18-wheeler through it sideways. You can provide credit for a lot of different things, and Comar allows you to provide credit, at least allows the school system to provide credit. If you can't write that number down and then look up Comar, because I actually left this actual regulation on my desk. So when you get home or when you get the opportunity, check that regulation out because it gives you a ton of information as to how kids earn credit, how they can earn credit in the state of Maryland. There are some places, the law says that kids can take a test to pass a course. I don't know how much access we allow or how many kids we allow to do that, but that's another opportunity for kids. There's another thing that allows kids to work, and if their work experience aligns with the goals of the local school system, then the kid can actually get credit for work. So there are a lot of different things that you can do to help kids graduate and get credits. There's my contact information. Thank you guys. You've been great. I think I've held a long time actually putting on the clock. Thank you guys. There's my contact information. Be good. I'll collect your cards when you're done. Gary. That's disrespectful. No, it's good. Thank you. She's suspended. Did everybody write on the cards? Okay. Thank you. Yes, please.
When you go downstairs, there'll be somebody sort of directing you where to go for lunch.
Yeah, I do. You do?
And then from lunch, we go back to where we were this morning. And Robert, you know to join us for lunch. Right?
Yes. Thank you, man. Thanks, sir. Thank you.
Some people have less issues.
We
with
got
it.
but it needs to be dealt with. And
But it sounds like you were working together as a team.
We've all.
Okay. Okay, appreciate it.
what's many have been used.
You have copies of the audit forms for the majors, these classes. I just have
The new one?
no the old.
I have the old.
I just got the new one for my class.
Yeah, I found them like that.
I think it's like, yeah. You're on the shore, you're not surf and turf.
Means tuna fish and spam.
Oh. Is there cafeteria open?
Yeah, we're not.
Oh, yeah, I figured. I was thinking hard. Alright, this one will read my stuff.
Well, everything else going okay for you?
Yeah, everything else was.
I just think I think that there's a better way to do something. Mm-hmm. And to me, there's a way to negotiate change, and that is cost effective, it's adversarial, it is. I don't know. I mean, regardless of philosophical beliefs, I have friends here, I have friends people. What I don't like is this time. And so for me, I don't care what it's time about right or left. I don't like this time. And I feel like in some cases we're spending a lot of time being dishonest on both sides. And because one side believes it's cause, that's okay. But it's not okay for the other side to believe that's not really happening. It's actually turning me off like my because of just the political nonsense. Yes. She's from college, and she's so she was a snow down there. Like it's like it's a blizzard. Yeah, she worked around. Yeah. Yeah, that's what Kai said. Yes. That's what Kai said. They got ice. She was like that.
Somebody was like, there was a showroom involved. This is how we slide down here. You have a helmet on.
Mother, I
There's
your face
a lot of
got
money in this education. No head trauma, please.
Yeah. Kai said she was on bus capture, so no. Nah, they're really not.
Thank you very much, and you know, just enjoy your school.
Oh, sure. Well, they can take my chair. I thought you were buying one. You are buying one. Oh, yeah. We need to get our bags back with us. Whatever. Tell us more about your daughters. you have a child.
I think he's a little bit past. The one daughter.
Oh,
The good news is I just saw three.
well, you could have it. Yeah, but you.
From the mouse, you see my 3-year-old climbing into the dog cage. It's the funniest thing.
We have a 3-year-old.
And a 7-year-old.
Getting a journey.
Yes.
So now I'm.